"Don't jump," said a struggling black single dad, pulling the girl from the bridge. She turned out to be a millionaire's daughter. Thunder cracked across the Golden Gate Bridge as rain hammered the steel cables. The fog rolled thick and heavy, turning the city lights into ghostly halos. It was past midnight when Marcus Washington clutched his 3-year-old daughter Zoe closer to his chest, his worn jacket the only shield against the storm. His construction shift had run overtime again, and the long trek home felt endless. His sneakers splashed through puddles as he bent his head against the wind. That's when he spotted her, a silhouette against the storm, standing beyond the safety barrier. A young woman, her bare feet gripping the wet metal, her sundress clinging to her frame like a second skin. Marcus's heart lurched. She was preparing to jump. He broke into a run, Zoe bouncing against his ribs. "Stop," he called out, his voice swallowed by the wind. "Please wait." The girl turned just as her footing gave way. She pitched forward. Marcus dove, his fingers wrapping around her wrist at the last second. The force yanked him against the railing, his shoulders slamming into the metal with a sickening thud. Zoe cried out, startled and scared. Marcus twisted to protect her while maintaining his grip on the stranger. The girl dangled over the churning bay below, her free arm reaching desperately, her dark hair whipping around her tear-streaked face. Marcus gritted his teeth, rain streaming into his eyes, his grip slipping on her wet skin. "Hold on," he gasped, his muscles screaming. "I've got you. Just don't move." She began to panic, thrashing instinctively. Each movement loosened his hold. "Stop fighting," Marcus pleaded. "You're making it worse." "I didn't want this," she sobbed. "It's okay," he said, his voice strained. "I understand. But this isn't the answer." Her hand started sliding through his. Marcus made a split-second decision. He set Zoe down on the wet walkway, ignoring his daughter's frightened cries, and grabbed the girl with both hands. "Listen to me," he said, pulling with everything he had. "You think you're alone, but you're not. I lost everything too, my wife, my job, my home. But I kept going because of her." He nodded toward Zoe, who stood shivering nearby. "You'll find your reason to stay." With a final surge of strength, Marcus hauled the girl over the railing. She collapsed against him, both of them shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. Zoe crawled into his lap, wet and confused. The three of them huddled together under the storm. "You saved me," the girl whispered. "No," Marcus replied softly. "You chose to hold on. I just gave you something to hold on to." The rain had softened to a drizzle by the time they reached the bus shelter. Marcus draped his jacket around the girl's shoulders while Zoe dozed against his chest. The stranger, she said her name was Sophia, sat in silence, gripping the jacket like a lifeline. Finally, she spoke. "My mother died when I was 15. Car accident. She was my whole world. We used to drive across this bridge every weekend just to watch the sunset." Her voice cracked. "After she died, my father became this cold, distant person. All he cares about is the business, the legacy. Last month, he told me I'm marrying his business partner's son. Didn't ask, just decided. I'm 20 and he's trading me like property." Marcus listened without judgment. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "That's not fair." "You don't even know me," Sophia said, surprised. "Pain is pain," Marcus replied. "Doesn't matter if you're wearing designer clothes or secondhand everything. It cuts just the same." She let out a shaky breath. "Everyone tells me how lucky I am. You have everything, Sophia. But I feel invisible, like I don't matter as a person." Marcus looked at Zoe sleeping peacefully. "You matter," he said gently. "You're here, you're breathing. That's not nothing." For the first time in months, Sophia felt seen. Marcus didn't take her to his cramped studio apartment in Oakland. Instead, he called his neighbor Mrs. Chun, a retired nurse with a kind heart and a spare couch. She welcomed them without questions, offering dry clothes and hot tea. Sophia watched in amazement as Zoe toddled over and offered her own blanket. "You cold?" the little girl asked with genuine concern. "A little," Sophia admitted, touched by the child's innocence. "This help," Zoe said seriously, wrapping the small blanket around Sophia's shoulders. Marcus made tea with whatever he could find, mismatched cups and generic tea bags, but Sophia had never tasted anything more perfect. "Why did you help me?" she asked as they sat in the warm living room. "Because someone helped me once," Marcus said, his eyes on his sleeping daughter. "When my wife died in that car crash 2 years ago, I was lost. Had a baby to raise and no idea how to go on. Mrs. Chen showed up every day, brought food, watched Zoe when I had job interviews, just sat with me when I couldn't talk. Sophia absorbed this quietly. I don't have much, Marcus continued, but I know what it feels like to be on the edge, and I know what it means when someone reaches out. She studied his face, the worry lines, the exhaustion, the calloused hands from manual labor. Yet he had given her everything without asking for anything in return. I thought love meant being controlled, she said softly. My father only values me when I'm useful. Real love isn't about control, Marcus said. It's about showing up, especially when it's hard. That night, Sophia didn't dream of falling. She dreamed of flying. When Marcus woke the next morning, Sophia was gone. Only a folded note remained on the coffee table. Thank you for showing me I still have value. I'll find my way back to myself. Weeks passed. Marcus thought about her often, wondering if she was safe, if she'd found her strength. Winter was harsh. Work was scarce. Bills piled up, but he persevered for Zoe. Then came the accident. A scaffolding collapse at a downtown construction site sent Marcus to the hospital with broken ribs, a shattered wrist, and a severe concussion. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, wondering how he'd provide for Zoe, a familiar voice spoke his name. Marcus? He turned slowly toward the doorway. There stood Sophia, transformed but unmistakable. Her hair was styled differently. She wore an elegant coat, and she carried a bouquet of white roses. Hey, she said with a nervous smile. Sophia, he whispered, hardly believing it. I saw the news about your accident online, she said, moving closer. I had to come. She sat beside his bed, placing the flowers on the nightstand. There's something I didn't tell you that night. My full name is Sophia Reeves. My father is Thomas Reeves, the tech mogul. Marcus blinked in confusion. The Reeves Industries guy? She nodded. The same one. Billionaire, workaholic, emotional stranger. That's my dad. I don't understand, Marcus said weakly. When I broke down on that bridge, nobody noticed I was missing for hours. But you, a stranger carrying his child through a storm, you saw me. You saved me. Her voice grew steady. I never forgot that night. Now it's my turn to help. You don't owe me anything, Marcus protested. I want to, she said firmly. Let me be here for you and Zoe. Over the following weeks, Sophia became a constant presence. She brought groceries, played with Zoe, and helped with physical therapy appointments. She never acted like a savior. She simply showed up, day after day. One afternoon, as they walked through Golden Gate Park with Zoe running ahead, Sophia asked, Do you ever think about fresh starts? Every day, Marcus admitted. But it's hard when you're still carrying so much baggage. What would your fresh start look like? She asked. He smiled, watching Zoe chase pigeons. A house with a yard. Zoe playing outside safely. Maybe someone to share it with. Their eyes met briefly before Sophia looked away, blushing. That sounds beautiful, she said softly. Gradually, Sophia began to understand Marcus's world, how he budgeted every dollar, how he read the same bedtime story multiple times without complaint, how he never asked for help despite clearly needing it. When the hospital bill arrived, astronomical even after insurance, Sophia quietly paid it. Days later, she found an envelope under her car windshield. Inside was $40 in crumpled bills and a note. For the hospital. We'll pay rest soon. Promise. More envelopes followed. $25. $15. Sometimes just loose change. Each payment came with the same message. He would never take advantage of her kindness. One evening, as Zoe colored at the kitchen table, she held up her artwork. Look, Sophia. That's you. That's Daddy. And that's me. What are we doing? Sophia asked, kneeling beside her. We're a family, Zoe said matter-of-factly. You're my new mommy, right? The room went silent. Marcus looked up from washing dishes, eyes wide. Sophia's breath caught, tears welling in her eyes. That's the most wonderful thing anyone's ever said to me, she whispered, hugging the little girl. Later, as Sophia stood in the small kitchen trying to process her emotions, Marcus approached quietly. I'm sorry about what she said, he began. Don't be, Sophia interrupted, her voice trembling. Marcus, I've never felt more like myself than I do here. With you, with Zoe. Me too, he admitted, stepping closer. They stood in that tiny kitchen, surrounded by mismatched dishes and the lingering scent of dinner, and something beautiful bloomed between them. Real, honest, unforced. The story broke on a Tuesday. Heiress Sophia Reeves living with single father in Oakland. Headlines blazed across social media. Paparazzi swarmed Marcus's building, cameras flashing through windows, reporters shouting questions about motives and money. Sophia stood frozen in the apartment, staring at her phone as her father's name appeared repeatedly. Then came the knock, 2 security guards in expensive suits. "Miss Reeves needs to come with us," one said curtly. "Mr. Reeves demands her immediate return." "She's not property," Marcus said, stepping forward. The man ignored him entirely. "Miss Reeves, if you refuse, Mr. Reeves will pursue legal action." Sophia looked at Marcus with apologetic eyes. "I'll fix this. I just need time." And then she was gone. Within hours, Marcus's reputation was shredded online. Anonymous sources claimed he was a gold digger with a history of targeting wealthy women. One blog suggested he'd been negligent during his wife's fatal accident. Forums questioned his parenting abilities. Job opportunities vanished. Contractors stopped returning calls. Neighbors whispered behind his back. Zoe, confused by the sudden absence, kept asking when Sophia was coming home. Meanwhile, Sophia found herself trapped in her father's penthouse, her phone confiscated, internet access blocked. Her father called it protection. "Do you realize what you've done to our family name?" Thomas Reeves paced angrily across the marble floor. "You've embarrassed us publicly." "I'm not your publicity prop," Sophia shot back. "I'm your daughter." "That man is using you," he said coldly. "I know his type. Opportunistic, manipulative. He probably planned this whole thing." "He's more of a father than you've ever been," she said defiantly. Her father's face hardened. "You're staying here until you come to your senses." But Sophia's fire had been lit, and it wouldn't be extinguished. 3 nights later, at 2:47 a.m., a figure moved through the emergency stairwell of the Reeves building. Sophia, wearing dark clothes and carrying only a backpack, slipped past security and vanished into the San Francisco fog. Marcus was dozing in his chair, Zoe sleeping in his lap, when he heard the soft knock. He opened the door cautiously to find Sophia standing there, soaked from the rain, breathless, eyes blazing with determination. "If you'll still have me," she said, "I'm here. I walked away from the money, the family name, the security. But I won't walk away from you." Marcus stared at her, speechless. "I chose this," she continued. "I chose us." Without a word, he stepped aside. Sophia dropped her bag and wrapped her arms around both Marcus and Zoe. The little girl stirred and mumbled sleepily. "You came back." "I did, baby," Sophia whispered, kissing her forehead. "I'm not leaving again." In that small, cluttered apartment, as chaos raged in the outside world, a quieter storm finally settled. They were together, not rich, not famous, not certain of tomorrow, but real. And that was everything. The next morning, Sophia walked into her father's law office wearing jeans, a simple t-shirt, and no jewelry. The lawyers looked confused by her casual appearance. Thomas Reeves sat at the head of the conference table, his expression icy. "I'm here to sign," Sophia announced calmly. "Sign what?" her father asked. "The papers to renounce my inheritance, my trust fund, my shares in the company. All of it." The room fell silent. "I don't want your money or your control," she said steadily. "I want a life I build with my own hands." Her father stood abruptly. "Don't be ridiculous. You're emotional, not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearer than I ever have," Sophia interrupted. "I want a life built on love, not conditions." "You walk out that door, you lose everything," he warned. "No, Dad," she said softly. "I'm finally gaining everything that matters." She signed the papers and left. In the weeks that followed, Sophia found work at a small bookstore cafe in Oakland, learning to make coffee, organize inventory, and handle difficult customers with grace. She came home smelling of coffee beans and old books, and she'd never been happier. Marcus returned to construction work part-time while caring for Zoe. Together, they saved every penny toward opening their own community cafe, a warm, welcoming space near the Golden Gate Bridge where people could find comfort and connection. Sophia painted murals on the walls while Marcus built custom furniture from reclaimed wood. Zoe named their venture New Beginnings Cafe. It opened quietly, with no fanfare, just neighbors, friends, and the rich aroma of hope brewing. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, A distinguished man in a tailored suit entered the cafe. He sat alone in the corner, observing quietly. Sophia was by the window with Zoe, teaching her watercolor techniques. "Gentle strokes, sweetheart," Sophia said. "Let the colors tell their own story." Zoe nodded seriously, her tongue poking out in concentration. The man watched this tender scene, watched his daughter, who had once been a chess piece in his empire, now glowing with authentic joy. He watched how Zoe leaned into Sophia naturally, how the woman he'd tried to control had found her true self. For the first time in years, Thomas Reeves felt something crack open in his chest. He stood quietly, placed an envelope in the tip jar marked, "Pay what you can," and left without a word. Inside was an unsigned check with a note, "For your colors." 1 year later, New Beginnings Cafe had become a cornerstone of the community. Beyond coffee and pastries, it hosted support groups, art classes, and healing circles. Sophia had found her calling helping others who felt lost or alone. On a Thursday morning, as Sophia spoke to a group of journalism students about second chances, she said, "I stood on that bridge convinced my life wasn't worth living. But through the storm came a stranger, soaked, carrying his child, offering nothing but kindness. And he showed me that every life has value." At the back of the room, a man in dark glasses sat alone. When Sophia finished speaking, he quietly left another envelope at the donation station, this one containing a substantial gift to the New Beginnings Foundation, signed simply Anonymous. Weeks later, the Golden Gate Bridge became a place of celebration. Marcus and Sophia were married beneath its towering cables, with fairy lights strung overhead and wildflowers lining the walkway. Zoe, in a white dress, skipped down the aisle carrying a small bouquet. As the officiant said, "Here, where a life almost ended, a new chapter begins." Their hands intertwined, and the bridge, once a symbol of despair, transformed into one of hope. After the ceremony, friends filled the cafe with laughter and music. Late in the evening, an older gentleman entered quietly. He approached Zoe, who was playing with other children, and handed her a wrapped gift. She opened it to find a children's book titled New Beginnings, with her name inscribed inside. Sophia turned, her breath catching. "Dad," he nodded gently. "I thought legacy meant buildings and bank accounts," he said. "But it's what you've created here. This community, this love, that truly lasts." They stood in comfortable silence. "You don't need to change who you are to make me proud," he added quietly. "You already have." No apology was needed. Forgiveness had already found them. That night, after the last guest had departed, Marcus and Sophia sat outside their cafe. The Golden Gate Bridge glowed against the city skyline behind them. "If you hadn't stopped me that night," Sophia whispered. "If you hadn't held on," Marcus replied, "I wouldn't have found my purpose either." Zoe ran out barefoot, clutching a cup of hot chocolate. "I love our bridge," she declared. "I'm going to tell everyone it's the bridge of hope." They laughed, and they believed her. Some places aren't just where things end. Some are where they begin. The Golden Gate Bridge, once nearly the site of a young woman's final moment, now stood as a symbol of second chances, unconditional love, and the courage to keep fighting through any storm. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even in the darkest hours, love can light the way, then you too believe in new beginnings. At Soul-Stirring Stories, we share true-to-life tales that heal, inspire, and remind us of the beauty in human connection. Subscribe to join our growing family of hearts that still believe in compassion, resilience, and the quiet power of hope. Hit the bell so you never miss a story that might change your day or your life.